Good morning. I welcome you to this tutorial section on Southern Africa in the 19th century. In this section, we'll be considering the history of the San people of Southern Africa, popularly known as the Bushmen, as we have considered in our class. So, the San people, known as Bushmen, are basically hunters and gatherers who were the original inhabitants of present-day Botswana, Namibia, and northwest South Africa. So they are the indigenous or autochthonous or aboriginal people of these areas. The San people, as we have noted in our class, belong to the linguistic group speaking Khoisan language, unlike the other third groups, the Bantu, which we would examine also. So they speak languages which include Khoi Khoi, the Kong, Quick, and other speakers. They also belong to other speakers of the click languages. So despite the some similarities in languages and appearance, we've noted that the San and the Khoi Khoi represent two distinguished, distinct ethnic groups who at various instances or periods of history coexisted in the same region. These people, the San and the Khoi Khoi, belong to the Stone Age settlers in Southern Africa. So we've also noted the etymology of the word san, which is been reportedly to have emanated from their word sa, which means gatherers of fruits or harvests. So we noted also that their ways of life, actually also was what made the Europeans to describe them as Bushmen, a term, of course, a term which is considered very, very denigrating and derogatory, all right, and unusable in contemporary historical discourse. The San people were quite improvident, as we have noted. They are known as Bushmen, mainly because of their hunting activities. So that is that their economic and social activities revolves around cattle grazing, which they did for so long around the Kalahari Desert, which was perhaps their ancestral locations. They are generally of small stature, light skin, and with wrinkles visible on their bodies, at their early stage, right, of formation. We've noted that they actually occupy several places, spread all over some areas in Southern Africa countries like Zimbabwe, Zambia, Namibia, and also some areas even outside South Africa, Tanzania, Angola, and of course in South Africa, they are quite more visible. The sun's longevity in Southern Africa, as we have discussed, range between 2,000 to 30,000 years ago. Which shows that they are perhaps one of the longest, people to have stayed in in Southern Africa for a long time. Although the sun actually, their history also is shrouded in obscurity. It may date back to even much earlier period as this, early Stone Age. The complex nature of their society has been avidly studied and offers critical insight into the late Stone Age period, which I've mentioned. For instance, it was noted that the recovered collection of tools associated with the sun has been dated through radiocarbon datings and scientific instruments to around 15,000 years ago. And also, of course, these are been tested, which demonstrate that the San people belong to the Stone Age period. Now, these stone tools were named for the they were names for various areas in Southern Africa, such as the in Cape Province in South Africa, where they were first discovered. So some of the tools recovered by archaeologists, the kits, for instance, demonstrate also an advanced level of tool making ability, including scrapers, borers, and microliths, which are long blade like blades, like pieces of stones. It shows that the early Stone Age Sand people produce, they are profound users and makers of iron and iron stone tools. All right, these are some of the technologies available to the San people during the Stone Age period. Fundamentally, the San were nomadic hunters and gatherers of food, and their social organization was quite adaptable to that form of life. Okay, they had no real clans, no, like the other groups which we have examined, which we will examine, the Khoikhoi and the Bantus and all the others. So only hunting parties which probably not never exceeded 100 people, both men and women and children, constitute a society, or a social formation in the clan dominated area. Also, only rudiments of tribal organizations and chieftaincy uh, existed among the San. So that means they didn't have strong or viable or elaborate political structures. They were known as bushmen, men of the bush, or the bushmen by the Dutch when the New Europeans came in the 15th and the 16th century. Also, I've noted that the San were improvident. That means they made no provision for the future. They were toughly built, with an average height of about 5 feet and yellow brown in complexion. Okay, of course, they were quite popular for their ability to make rock engravings and painting, drawn from their animal art and all of that. The San particularly were said to be nomad from Stone Age, which I've mentioned. That has been their major occupation, nomad, moving from place to the other, plucking fruits and vegetables and gathering stuffs they never planted, crop or engage in any cattle grazing like the Khoikhoi or other groups. So, of course, temporary living in caves and under rocks was one of the major features of the San people. About the ancestor, not much is known. Fundamentally, of course, unlike most other African groups, the San left no couples of oral traditions. That means like many African countries, they didn't. They were pre-literate societies. All right, they had no formal means of documenting their history. That is, no couples of oral traditions from which their history can be reconstructed. However, those of them who occupy the western desert region around the Kalahari, in the face of outside pressure, did retain some aspect of their primordial way of life, through drawing and rock engravings and all the stuff. So whatever pieces of information that we do have, and for whatever they may be worth, it is believed that the San were still living like the Stone Age hunters and gatherers when the Europeans encountered them in the 15th and 16th century. Of course, it is uncertain, however, why they were. Some argues that the San, when the Europeans met them, were still living like the Stone Age period. Of course, they were still, probably naked and unkept. So in the beginning, they were scattered all over most of Southern Africa long before the Christian area. I've mentioned that, and they belong to a homogeneous group. All right, so they are quite related. They all the San belong to the same stock, associated with the same ancestor. All right, okay. It is also very very important to know that there was quite a number of reasons why the Europeans christened them the San. All right, Richard Elphick, for instance, noted that the Europeans prefer to call them Bushmen because of the improvident life they practice, hunting and gathering, which is a purely economic description of people who are quite very primitive, with no settled life and no social and economic organization. Okay, so of course they were also known as the Otentos, by both their neighbors and the Europeans. So the San inhabited the plains and the edge of the Kalahari. Many of them were mountain dwellers who lived along the river valleys also, and some lived around the coastal period. You understand? So, for instance, around the Cape Table Bay and the Mosel Bay, when the Portuguese first came, perhaps the San were the first group in Southern Africa who had contact with these Europeans. The environment in which they found themselves determined their hunting activities, as I've mentioned. The nature of the environment actually necessitated the need for them to engage in hunting and gathering. Of course, it was due to their poor level of adaptation to the environment. The Bantu came later, much later, and they made sense. Their livelihoods, they adapted, into the environment, and they could, produce all kinds of crops, as we will later see. Generally, the San were of small stature, as we have noted. They were about 5 feet tall, but tough, physically, built, and they had also remarkable powers of endurance. They were strong. Their complexion was also, sallow. They were light skinned. Their hair, was that of of the white Europeans, and their hair lobes, and their faces was almost triangular and beardless. They had deep set twinkling eyes set between their forehead, with broad noses, projecting jaws, slender limbs, tiny and bulging stomach. And we've noted that their women, were described as having pendulous breasts and fat buttocks. These are some of the major features, physical features of the San people. What about the social institution or culture, social culture of the San? We've noted that the institution of marriage among the San was very feeble. In this case, family connections were, very weak. That is, marriage was polygamous, and young men sometimes fought to win their brides among the San people. So it was not just a system where, people. It was not an egalitarian society as such. All right, people had to struggle. Young men will have to struggle, to fight and win, their bride. As soon as children were old enough to fend for themselves among the San, parental authority came to an end, more or less, and the old and infirm who could no longer keep pace with the group, were usually left behind to look after themselves. So not so much is known about their religious practices, like the Bantu, but the San people, were afraid to violate their customs. They had strong regard and respect for traditions. They wore charms as a means of protection against witchcraft, and also propitiated the spirits. They worshipped their ancestor. They believed also vaguely in immortality, that is life after death. Okay, and this shaped their existential reality or experiences. Some groups also worship the Kagan. No, a spirit was a sky deity who was believed, by the sun to have created all things, and whose embodiment was the mantis. And some other sun also worship the moon, like the Khoikhoi people, did also. So they worship the moon and the stars. Of course, linguistically, their language had a limited vocabulary, as and with no plurals, as we have noted in our class. They spoke in cliques, which is a speech pattern characterized by the use of implosive consonants. Okay, the San people didn't have much vocabulary registers. Intentionally you compare that with other languages in Africa or elsewhere. They were deficient in mathematics, and it is recorded that they were incapable of counting beyond three. But these were, also some of their limitations. But they also had profound, uh, profound virtues, in the sense that they were acclaimed storytellers. In spite of all the deficiencies we have highlighted, the San people were great storytellers, and fantastic dancers and extraordinary mimics. So their strength or their virtue, reflected more in artistic, representations. All right, so they made sense of their, existence by the profound knowledge they have in storytelling, skills in storytelling and dancing, and okay, they had a great sense of humor. Their painting and their engravings as we have also noted, depict a wide variety of style. That is, they had great power of imagination, a lively sense of humor, and all in their hearts. The record of painting and engravings which they practiced until the 19th century are still very much visible in many parts of in Southern Africa today. Some of their drawings around in caves and rock engravings and all of that, including the caves and rock shelters they constructed, are still very much visible. Their clothing was made of animal skin, like the Khoi people. Of course, we've noted that they, in beautifying themselves, adorning themselves, they wore necklaces made of eggshells or seashell. And among the coastal people, they were elegantly adorned with all kinds of, natural and natural objects. Economically, okay, the San were known to be hunters and gatherers, as we have noted. Although the San hunted in small groups, they developed a highly and effective method for bringing down animals like eland, kudu, impala, and bush dog. Okay, bush dog, using various traps, animal traps and spears and arrows coated with poisonous, metals and vegetables. Okay, so it was known among the San that after a successful hunting expedition, okay, every part of the animal was consumed, and this was why they were described as improvident, having no plan, for the future. Okay, because they realized from their hunting or gathering, activities were usually consumed. Of course, the skin of those animals, particularly consumed by the sun, were used to produce clothing materials, including bags. So another factors that shaped their activities was that the men particularly were predominantly involved in the hunting activities, while their women and their children produce some of these stuffs, bags, and all of that from the animal skins. What about the food consumed by produced or consumed by the sun? Their food included basically honey, berries, mongongo nuts, insects such as grasshoppers, fruit, and smaller animals such as tortoises and mole rats. Okay, archaeological findings suggest that their women also obtained white roots and plants from more than 100 types of crops available in the region. Okay, in addition to that, there were also all of these actually contribute to shaping their nutritional diet and all of that. The San who lived closest to the coast particularly were also involved in fishing activities. They caught fish, they engage in rock, lobsters, seals. It is possible that also they produce salt, and baskets and all the stuff, or canoe, for instance, for fishing activities. There was profound cooperative system, a communal systems of network among the San people, like unlike their neighbors. This cooperative system of hunting and gathering allowed the San to share food resources among the members of their families or clan or kingship. So this group range, as we have noted, from 10 to 60 people. This, of course, was the smallest compared to the San, to the Khoi and the Bantu. It ranged from 10 to 60 people, but often, of course, with time shifted in size as a result of polygamy, and as well as resettlement, and of course, natural loss, from death or diseases also affected the demography of the Sand people. The Sand society, as we have noted, has been described as egalitarian because of their emphasis on shared work responsibility and leadership, choosing from a group of elders. And we've noted that between 20,000 and 15,000 BC, the San culture had developed to the point of burying the dead in accordance with specific rites. All right, so they had a well developed system of embalmment, or how to embalm or preserve their dead. Okay, so their spiritual belief system also centered around a single all-powerful God, as who, as well as smaller deities who were probably the ancestors. The son enjoyed comfort in life like other groups. They live in small clan groups of between 25 to 30 people, and there was no concept of private property among the people. The idea that is a land attached or attracts an economic value was simply not possible among the San, because land was freely available for anybody who needed it for one economic activities or personal activities or the other. All right, but their territorial habitation was well defined. Okay, people, there was limit to which where people could go to when people settled in a new land. So those land were properly partitioned. All right, everybody had their own area of control or jurisdiction. So, for emphasis, occupationally, they were hunters and gatherers. Again, they hunted and gathered food beyond their territories, and they were reputedly among the best trackers and the hunters in the world. They use various traps, as we have mentioned, dog traps to catch large animals, living in huts themselves, caves, or even rock shelters. Of course, during the expeditions, they simply set up camps in the open, and in this case, this enabled them to trap various animals. They were also great archers, and their weapon consisted of bows and arrows, stones, wood, and all the stuff as I've mentioned. The women used a digging stick for digging the earth for food. Also, the only domestic animals that the San actually domesticated or kept was the dog, which helped them in hunting activities. Okay, so the tips of their arrows were also treated with plant and snake poison, which helped them to tame many animals, for instance. And all the food they produced or they garnered was stored for domestic consumption. Basically, these like vegetables, fish, honey, like berries, insects, roots, and all the stuffs were consumed. So they were manufacturers of cooking utensils. Also, their women particularly, this also helped to shape their modes of survival. Basically, their food was eaten either raw or roasted, as we've noted in the class, and their drink was basically mead or which is a wine made from roots and honey. They also smoke dagga, which I've mentioned when we're looking at cannabis, okay, which is a kind of root stimulant. There was also some rudimentary trade activities among the San people, whereby products of their hunting were exchanged for iron products, cattle from their Bantu neighbors. So the economy of the San people, the economic history of the San is essentially a history of constant search for food supply, which was always precarious, difficult, and given their very simple political institution, their loose social organization, and precarious economic systems, it is not surprising that they wilted under continuous pressure from better organized and better endowed groups like the Khoikhoi and the Bantu. It was not difficult for them to be dislodged or for them to be reduced by these prominent or sophisticated groups. Okay, so the notion of land ownership remained questionable since the San people were highly immobile. Well, they are largely mobile, moving from one place to the other. So it is questionable whether the San really had control over land, as it's been argued by the Dutch that when the Dutch came, they never met the San, and this is a reflection of the fact that the San people were highly mobile. They didn't probably have physical structures around the land they claim to own, and this actually affected their history. Politically speaking, the San developed a very simple political system. As hunters, as gatherers, they traveled about in clans, in groups, of about 300 people maximum, and each clan had a war leader who may have no very little institutionalized authority, as we have noted. So this is quite different from the Bantu particularly. All right. So this clan leader or war leader among the San people, only at most had ritual power, ritual authority, especially as a rainmaker. Okay, so this his political authority was very, very weak. No adult clan member took decision after democratic discussions among themselves, among the clan and San society. So, in summary, we've noted that the San were one of the earliest people who are settled in Southern Africa during since the Stone Age period, but ultimately they were destroyed around 1652, by the first Europeans that arrived in South Africa because they were quite inferior and unexposed, and they were seen as described to use some of as wild animal in the words of some of these European anthropologists who have written about them. That explains where the derogatory tag Bushmen came from. Of course, because indeed the social organization of the San people was quite very, very weak, all right, by the time they encountered the Europeans. So the extermination of the San saw the death of over 200,000 of the San people, while some of them were sold into slavery, and this affected their population in Southern Africa. I think in this section we have been able to look at the history, a brief history of San people in Southern Africa. Thank you very much.